how do you create a magnetic brand? You have to know who the fuck you are. So I was living this life that I thought I should be doing. I started following that career path and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And whilst on paper, I was successful, but deep down inside, I was so anxious. I was so lost. Like my literal body and soul was screaming at me, you are not in alignment. Nobody is coming to save you, like, period.
What's your take on this explosion of coaches and what it means for the consumers in the world?
The first thing I want to say is
Emma Maidment, author of Find Your Flow and host of The Flow Lane, is a renowned yoga and meditation teacher who swapped PR for purpose, teaching practical ways to find flow without burnout.
I sat down in a coffee shop one day and a friend said to me, what do you really want to be doing? I said, I want to be running yoga retreats, I want to be doing public speaking, and I want to be helping health and wellness businesses understand PR and marketing, because it's clear that a lot of them don't, and I have that natural ability and professional background. And she was like, so why aren't you doing it? And that hit me of like, I'm just telling myself this story and that is keeping me stuck.
So how does the external person though really tell the difference?
People feel and read energy, whether they're aware of it or not. If they have self-awareness, you'll straight away get in a room with someone and be like, I don't know what it was about that person, but they were so magnetic. The aura around them attracts people in, the right people, because they are walking their walk, they are staying true to their alignment, their values. That is what they're putting out there into the world. That is magnetism. That is them sharing their authentic values.
You know, to be able to find your flow is something amazing, but it'd be great if people could hear your definition of that.
So to be in a state of flow is your...
Hey, welcome, Emma. Let's flow.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so here for it.
Excellent. Well, you know what? I was so intrigued when I saw another person who is just putting flow right at the front of their business journey, their life journey, and really what they're all about. Now, you've got a background in PR and you've made this pivot into the wellness industry. Tell me about that to start with.
It was a great story of, I guess, following the path that you thought that you should be following. So basically, I wanted to study journalism. I wanted to be an author. That was kind of where this whole thing started. I loved writing, right? And then I realized, there's probably not that much money in that. At the time, the journalism industry was starting to already show red flags of maybe not being super stable. And so I thought, what do I do? And I met some girls who worked in PR and they told me about what they do. And I was like, that sounds cool. Maybe I'll study PR. And so they're like, you get to write, you get to be creative, you get to, do all these things. So I went to study PR at RMIT in Melbourne, and it was a bit of a tricky course to get into. You had to do a bunch of interviews, and basically they wanted you to write PR campaigns. And I was like, I don't have the degree in this yet, but sure, let's go for it. I think it was a question was something like, if you were Kanye West's PR manager, how would you handle this? It's like, I would actually love that job right now. That would be super fun. But anyway, so I just followed that path. It felt a little bit charming. I really wanted to move to Melbourne, and that's where the degree was happening. So I thought, okay, let's move to Melbourne. And then my ambition really kicked in. I call myself sometimes a recovering type A, but I had this life goal of I'm going to be the CEO by the time I'm 25. I'm going to own the house. I'm going to, all the things. It's just like that I saw myself almost as like Samantha from Sex and the City. Maybe I was watching way too much of that at a young age, but I was like, I'm just going to be this high-powered career woman. No one will stop me. And so the PR world really speaks to that. And so throughout my degree, I think I did 12 internships at once. I was this crazy, doing all the things, networking, all of that. And when I left that degree, they said, you're going to have to earn your stripes for the first few years of your career. There's no way you can go in-house. You have to work in an agency. And I'd done so many internships in agencies, and I was like, F that. That is just not for me. It's just, no offense to PR agencies. I have some friends that run some incredible ones, but I just knew that wasn't where I was going to be. I was going to work in-house. And everyone was saying to me, it's kind of tricky. So I got a job, started working with the Victoria Police Media, which was so interesting. Wow. Basically, keeping Channel 7 away from crime scenes and hectic. But obviously government, there's, it's tricky to kind of keep roles in that space. And so an opportunity came up to work in-house in a tech startup company. And at the time I knew nothing about technology, couldn't have cared less about technology. But it ticked the box of in-house role. And so I was like, well, this is what I've said I'm going to do on my vision board. So I should do this. And so that is kind of how the story of following the should came in. I started working with this company. They were amazing. it was the tech company boom in Australia. So we were like the darling of the startup scene. It was kind of when that world was really starting to happen. This is kind of maybe showing my age, but quite a few years ago. And so I was part of this startup ecosystem, and I was in the room with these really cool people, and I was flying back and forth to the Silicon Valley. Like my literal job, my goals were like, get a job that pays me to travel, because I love to travel, something that I can kind of climb the ladder and be the boss of eventually. That's it, right? I wasn't actually aligning those goals with my personal values. So on the side of this, all I was doing was going to yoga before work and drinking green juices in the office and brewing kombucha in the office cupboard. People thought I was the craziest person. I was on such a health journey. So the background to this is that I had a lot of health stuff going on. I've been traveling the world a lot, had picked up some parasites that went undiagnosed, and they had knocked me for six. My digestive system was a disaster. I was just basically kind of piecing my health together by the tiny bits of yoga and meditation that I was kind of trying to do in the background. And so the book that I wrote literally starts with, this is a story of me being full of shit, figuratively and literally. And it is like 100% exactly where I was at. Like I was living this life that I thought I should be doing. I started following that career path of, I'm just going to keep doing this because this is what I should be doing. This is what I've said I was going to do. So I need to honor that vision that I've had and just keep pushing. And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And whilst on paper, I was successful, right? I was like, all my PR uni friends were like, how have you gotten this job? You're already traveling around the world, helping with launches, and you're like running their whole Australian PR, you know, that you're the girl for them in Australia, because they had global offices. It was like the dream, right? But deep down inside, I was coming home riddled with anxiety. My partner at the time would literally be like, I don't know what to do with you. Can you just go for a run? The worst possible thing I could have done. Can you just go for a run? Because there's too much energy going on here, and you just need to like get it out. Like I was so anxious. I was so lost. I had cystic acne all over my face that I was just covering under pounds of makeup. Like my literal body and soul was screaming at me, you are not in alignment. But I'm like, I've got my big barrel of should, and I'm going to keep pushing it up that hill because I have a goal to reach. And so I just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing until my physical health was like, lady, like you are not listening to us. And I speak about this a lot in the book. It's like you get these knocks and you get these knocks until something literally is like slapping you in the face, knocking you over. Hey, you are not listening to where you are being guided right now. You are totally out of alignment and you are not living in flow, essentially. And so it floored me. And that's what led to me going, okay, maybe I could pursue this dream that I have of being a yoga teacher, of inspiring people, of all these things I kind of wanted to do, but kept telling myself were years out of reach. I needed more experience. I needed more this. I needed more that. Again, just story loops over and over and over again until I went and did my yoga teacher training, loved it, realized, okay, I'm going to start teaching yoga in the office to all the startup people that are stressed out of their mind and have no wellness practices, and just kept getting pulled and pulled more into that world until I decided, you know what, I'm leaving this job and I'm throwing caution to the wind and I'm moving to Europe on a one-way ticket and I'm just going to follow my dreams, basically. And my manager and my boss at the time was like, how much money do we need to give you to make you stay? Like, could you stick this out for a few more years? Like, don't do this. Please stay. And I was like, nope, my mind's made up. I'm going. And so I left, ended up in Berlin and fell straight back into the same cycle, panicked about, oh, I don't have money coming in. I'll go work in a tech startup. And I literally repeated the exact same cycle again until they fired me. That's another story. Because it was a long story, but I got fired and that was really humbling. And I'm like, okay, I'm clearly out of alignment again. And can you see this pattern that you have just repeated out of fear? And I sat down in a coffee shop one day and a friend said to me, what do you really want to be doing? I said, I want to be running yoga retreats. I want to be doing public speaking, and I want to be helping health and wellness businesses understand PR and marketing, because it's clear that a lot of them don't. And I have that like natural ability and professional background. And she was like, so why aren't you doing it? And I had all these stories as to why I wasn't doing it. And that hit me of like, I'm just telling myself this story and that is keeping me stuck. And so I went home and I pitched my first client, hey, your blog this is back in the day of blogging, your blog is terrible. Your content is great. Your blog is terrible. You're not optimizing it. Your social media sucks. Let me help you. And they were like, great, what's your rates? And so I was literally Googling how much do freelance marketing people charge? Put together a package. That was my first client. And that was, again, the timing of the boom of the wellness scene in Melbourne. And so then I ended up working with some of the most incredible companies that are still going today, building brands that literally have lasted over a decade in the wellness space. And what it made me realize was that when people's values are in alignment with what they're good at, with what is, a smart, profitable business plan, nature supports, right? They're being supported by that. They're in that flow. They've set up the systems, the structures, the boundaries, all that thing to support them. When they're out of that alignment, the business owners I would work with, for example, I had one, he had amazing business, amazing branding, all the things. And he was like, I hate people. And I'm like, why are you running a retail company? He's like, I cannot stand customers. I hate talking to customers all day, every day. He was really passionate about marketing. So he turned his whole business model to a digital model, and happy as Larry, off he goes. So you start to realize that if there's this discrepancy between what you truly value, what you're actually good at, what your like God-given gifts are, when you can marry all of that up with what you feel like is your purpose in that moment, which is an important point that maybe we can come back to of that evolving, nature supports and you're able to flow. So that's kind of how I went from like corporate stressed out PR girly, doing the things I thought I should be doing, to actually listening in, learning how to trust my intuition and living a life of alignment without just throwing caution to the wind and meditating in a cave all day in India.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the playbooks that goes on when people run hard in corporate world, right? And you are definitely part of that scene, whether you're in a big corporate or you're in a rising startup, you're in the rat race. And then you're sort of hitting the wall in some way. Sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's physical. I would say there's a fair percentage of people that have got into coaching and wellness that have come off the back of just really want to run away from what they're in at the time. Now, some of them do swing the pendulum just a little bit too far in that direction, like you said, and end up meditating on a hill. And I am keen to tap into that with you as well, because we've got a lot of audience of business owners or those that want to be aspirational, entrepreneurial people. And I know that I've been getting a lot of feedback from our viewers and listeners about if we could go a little bit deeper on that. So you can hold me to that. I'll ask a bit more about the business side of it. I am curious from that, which was this tech startup, just so we can bring our listeners and viewers into the picture if they've ended up global.
So they were a company called 99 Designs. And when I started with them, they'd just gotten their first Series A. So they got 35 million from the Excel Group, which is like the same investors as Dropbox, Etsy, Facebook, all of that. Yeah. So they had gone from scrappy, couple of founders in a dungeon. And when I joined their company, their office was basically a dungeon. They're like, don't worry, we've just got investment. It's going to get better. And I'm like, oh, okay, I just want an in-house role, so I guess I'll take it. And it was an incredible opportunity to be a part of a company at that stage of hyper growth, because we were in global expansion mode. So they were acquiring companies. We were doing launches in different companies all over the world. So for me, as someone kind of coming into that as really only like my, second or third kind of paid position, I'd done heaps of internships. I'd worked with, in government, but this was like a massive role. It gave me the ability to run with it. And I learned so freaking much that I still apply to this day about actually running like business models, minimal viable products, seeing that play out at scale was just so incredible. And they've gone on to be acquired and like watching where the different people within that company have gone on to start their own businesses and whatnot has just been really, really inspiring. So it was a really cool time to be a part of that startup scene in Melbourne. It was like the rise of, Atlassian and Freelancer and like all these companies that have gone on to become, massive brands in that kind of tech space. Yeah. It was global giants. It was like, but you were in the room with them and they're going, we're trying to figure this out. We haven't nailed our product market fit yet. Like you were really in that kind of the cusp of that scrappy stage. And then everyone just went boom, which was, really cool to be a part of.
That is cool. Like I know 99 Designs because I used to be an avid listener of Tim Ferriss' podcast, Tim Ferriss Show.
Yes.
And he, how he does his ads once and then they're on there for like 20 years. So he's just like, this one's brought to you by 99 Designs. And they perform
so well for us.
Yeah, well, no doubt. That's how I know it. Like I actually, just to talk about that for a second, because he was so early to the party on pods. So like, I used to get so much business value out of it. Like when I got into private equity and venture capital, it was after I'd made a series of property technology in particular investments that just kind of like were dumb investments. Like I believed in the mission. I believed in the vision. I believed that there was a roadmap there, but I didn't understand much about how important it was that the founders had a handover plan to someone who was going to scale it. And, it was more than once that I went through the process, tried to build something, tried to buy into, I did buy into something, I was invited, and I'm like, I need to learn more about this. And it was his podcast that got me there. But I've actually gone on and bought stuff and still buy stuff from recommendations I heard on his long form ads, like more than 10 years ago. So like,
Yep.
did you have something to do with getting those ads with the PR and the marketing?
Yeah, so it was part of our PR strategy. So we used to do a lot of, and I don't know what they do nowadays, but we used to do a lot of organic PR. So we would do a lot of things like, so for those who don't know, 99 Designs is essentially a graphic design marketplace where they connect designers with people from all over the world. And so they would run these things, or they pioneered these things called the design contest. So you put up a brief basically, and you'd have designers sending a rough pitch of like, this is my concept, and then you would choose the concept and they would win the contest. Basically, they would win the prize. So it was a cool way for you to feel and find someone that really was matching your brief. So we would do things where, like, if there was a big sporting game, we would redesign like a t-shirt. We'd partnered in Australia. We partnered with like different music festivals and ran design contests, and really leveraged the platform in that way. And that gave us, organic PR outside of the straight up business PR of like 99 Designs gets, does this new acquisition. Here's, an AFR article about it. We were able to be really creative in working in different verticals. But yeah, after a couple of years of being there, we got to this point of like, that, what are the verticals that we're looking into? And that's when podcasts, we were like, hey, our SEO people, we were killing it on SEO. And we're like, how can we kind of bring that in this hybrid model of, at the time, not many people were doing, there was like Tim Ferriss and that was it.
I know. That was basically it.
It was really, really green. And I remember looking at that and thinking to myself, gosh, I'd love to have my own podcast one day, but it felt so out of reach. It felt like that's only for those kinds of people, And so that massive like mental block there, of course, because obviously I do have my own podcast now, but yeah, we started doing that, and the results were amazing. And you realize straight away, because this is also, like, to give the full context, this is kind of pre-influencer marketing. Like, this is, Instagram had only really just kind of become a thing. Influencers weren't really a thing. Like, it's crazy to see how this landscape has evolved. And so, yeah, we ended up becoming someone's full-time role to just analyze the data, basically, because you can see that if you give someone a code, you can track it pretty quickly in terms of how many sales are coming through, and then we just spend more money on that person, and that performed so well for them, and still does, because people have that brand awareness of literally everyone's like, oh yeah, I've heard of them from Tim Ferriss. It was a really, really incredible strategy.
I love that. I love the reflective moments like this too. So you've been at the start or in the early stage of markets that were moving more than once now, like if you've been in the early days of PR inside podcasts, you've been in the early stage of like tech startups in Australia, and now you've headed into coaching, which is just absolutely it's already blown up, but it continues to expand. And I am going to tap into that side as well here, that everyone's a coach now. Now, with everyone being a coach now, it's kind of like pretty unregulated. You can kind of call yourself a coach pretty quickly. And of course, there's enough courses out there so you can hang a virtual plaque on your virtual background. And you can literally take someone's life in your hands to an extent if you're in that life coaching or kind of that kind of world. Yet it's pretty hard for people to work out like where the real evidence is. Like, everyone's got testimonials. Everyone's got a piece of camera, user-generated content, speaking about a situation the other day. Now with AI generating stuff for people as well, like they can actually say it like they know it when they actually don't, and don't have a lot of lived experience to back it up. I had one person on this podcast, you may have seen one of my guests, excellent coach, one of the very early ones, Shanna Kennedy. She was around when like Tony Robbins was coming up, and she's like, it's totally different. Like, they had to do almost a degree to kind of become one. Yeah. And I know that you've had incredible success, and the lens that you've just spoken of, you are bringing something different to the fold. But what's your take on this explosion of coaches and what it means for the consumers in the world?
I mean, I think it means that discernment is key. I'm a big believer in the truth always reveals itself. So you can fake it to a certain point, and then if you can't back that up, you will not be successful long term. It will not sustain you. And a great example of this is even when I decided I really want to be a yoga teacher. I want to be a voice in the wellness space, right? I had the PR experience. So I went out and got a bunch of articles. I pitched myself. I knew how to do that. Suddenly I was being featured as a well-being expert, and here's her 5 top tips for runners. At the time, I didn't know what a freaking hamstring was. I'd done one little yoga teacher training and I was like, I think this is how yoga stretch. And I was like, you know what, lady, if you're going to do this, you have to back this up. You need to do the reps. And I did the freaking reps. I taught like 20 classes a week. I did all the trainings. I was mentored by some of the best people in the industry. I traveled with other yoga teachers that I aspired to be like and learned directly for them, because I was like, okay, I'm getting the visibility and the coverage, but if I can't back that up with my knowledge and someone comes to me going, hey, I saw you did this. Can you help me, or can you facilitate at this festival or whatever it is? And I can't back it up. That's embarrassing. And so most people go the other way, right? They spend all their time being a student and devoting themselves and doing all the courses and 1,000 million courses, don't focus on the visibility. And then they're in this frustration point of like, I'm 10 times more qualified than all these other freaking coaches and teachers and wellness people, but I didn't focus on the visibility and I don't have a brand behind me. And so it's a combination of both. And I think, like I've always said to people, marketing will kill you. Like, look at the food industry. You walk around the health food aisles and you're like, this is healthy. It's got a 5-star rating. This is amazing for me. And we know when we dig deeper, it's full of seed oils. It's full of this. It's like everything will kill you, right? So it's understanding that like PR, they used it in Nazi Germany. They've used propaganda for many, many years to sway public opinion. And if you're good at it, you can do that. And then there's a massive dark side to that. But I think I have this like more spiritual belief that like the truth always reveals itself. So if you go down that road and you try and just hoodwink people, at a certain point, that whole thing comes unstuck in some way. You will not be supported because it's not relevant to the betterment of, the universe as a whole, guiding people towards greater expansion. And that's kind of maybe more a spiritual perspective, but you're supported to a point, and then you always see these people end up in something happens behind the scenes, or they're actually genuinely not happy, or whatever it is behind that public persona. So I think from a consumer perspective, to kind of more directly answer the question, is you have to be discerning. You have to, like, I would never want to learn from someone that hasn't done what I want to do. There's a lot of people that are like, and this is also for me, right? When I wanted to do consulting, I was a consultant. Before we called it coaching, we called it consulting.
Yeah.
I wanted to consult with health and wellness brands, right? And then I found myself giving all of this advice, and I knew it was textbook correct marketing advice. I could see the numbers. I could look at it from that marketing PR. Okay, you've been featured in this, blah, blah, blah perspective, but I didn't have the firsthand experience. So when I left it was Mindful Marketing, was my marketing agency. And that was a really, it's funny, my friend said to me the other day, she was like, babe, you actually pioneered this like mindful approach to marketing. You were doing this like 15 years ago. And even though that was successful and I had a team and it was scaling, I had to leave that to go all in on my personal brand and myself, almost to prove to myself that what I was preaching to people actually worked, and what it felt like to be the face of a brand and to do all that kind of stuff, how do you actually get a book deal? Like, in theory, I knew, but what does that look like? How do you actually do that? So I guess for me, it's like I've always had to have this firsthand. My mum's always said, you have to learn the hard way. I've always had to learn tactilely, how do I actually do this? Does this work? Because there is no magic formula for getting a book deal, for getting XYZ. You can sell a course, you can pitch a framework that might help people, but it is so individual. And so it's like, how do you create a magnetic brand? You have to know who the fuck you are. Sorry if I shouldn't swear on this podcast.
No, it's okay.
You need to know you need to know who you are. You have to do that inner work to know who you are and be so clear on that and so in your integrity that you get up on a stage and you get on a podcast and you're speaking from heart. You're not just reading a script, because it's really easy nowadays to have AI write you a script and you just speak that script to camera and you sound like a freaking genius, right? But if someone comes in to work with you or does something more deeper, they realize, hang on a second, this person actually has no embodied wisdom. They're literally just reading a script, and I could have plugged this into ChatGPT and gotten the same response. And so I think it's being really discerning in, has this person walked the walk? Is there an embodiment piece to that? And for those people that are like, oh, but I'm starting out and I'm the green, 21-year-old coach that wants to get out there. Great. Do the reps, work with people, do the reps to upskill your training, to work on your brand. It's not to say that you have to be, a certain age bracket or experience level in order to get started. I started well before I was ready, but I made sure I was doing the reps over and over again and was honest and staying in integrity with what I knew how to do. So not over pitching, backing it up with knowledge, and being really transparent with people. And that is what has built me a brand that has been sustainable over time and has allowed me to pivot into different niches. Because I guess when I first started consulting, it was in marketing. And then when I became, then I focused on my personal brand and wanted to be on all the stages and speaking at all the wellness festivals. And so I did that and grew that as a brand and monetized that. And then I became a mum, and I really was like, I want to stay home with my kids and coach other mums to thrive in motherhood. So now I'm going to be a motherhood coach. And my personal brand enabled me to pivot into that space and be successful, to create the courses, to do the things with strategy that back that up. And then now to kind of get to a point where I'm like, you know what? It feels full circle, but I genuinely feel so called to helping these people create businesses with the right systems, with the right strategies, that scale, that, that you have a personal brand that becomes something in your niche, in your space that, I'm over a decade into this. And that has supported me for book deals, through sponsored podcasts, you can monetize it in so many different ways. But when you have that brand that shows the test of time, it is so much more valuable than, just these kind of random overnight pop-up success stories that we think are so amazing. But I look at, do they stand the test of time? Are they still going to be standing next to you in 10 years? Are they able to pivot? Because a lot of people don't. They're like, AI scares me and all this stuff freaks me out. I'm just going to stay in my lane. And then they don't get on social media, and boom, once their existing client flow runs out, it's trickier to grow to that next level. And then they're frustrated at all these, people that are on the stages that they want to be in. And so it's a constant evolution, and it's a constant, like I always say to people, entrepreneurship is like the most potent self-development journey you can go on, because you have to look at yourself from so many different angles if you really want to be successful, and face those parts of yourself, master those parts of yourself. If you want to be on global stages, but you struggle to communicate, you need to master communication. You can learn and master and get coached on anything if you're willing, if you have that growth mindset, and if you have a strong vision and a strong why, then you can run at it to make it happen. So I think that's discernment and integrity is ultimately the answer.
Yes, I think that the extra build out that you've done there, you have directly answered it. That discernment is getting harder and harder. And one of the things that I really liked what I heard you say there is it's kind of like the term a transportable personal brand, because it's always with you, right? And when you go to your next thing, there is often a big wash off. It's like you've had scrubs before you go in to do surgery. It's like, oh, that's what I was. I was like an engineer, and now I'm, a yoga teacher, or now I'm a real estate agent, or now I'm a whatever. And I think that the personal brand era is an era that we're in. We're in the era of AI. We're definitely in the era of personal brands. And that is helping other things happen, such as a rise of coaches, for example. When you talked about 10 years, that's a business topic in itself. And Hamilton Helmer, it's one of my favorite business reads called 7 Powers. And I don't know if you've come across it, but it's all about strategy, and there's a capital S and there's a lower S, and I'll get too technical if I go right into it to do with strategy. But what he talks about power is the ability of a company or a person to hold unique and valuable differentiation over a competitor. So it's like a strategic advantage for an extended period of time, i.e. a decade. And when you can hold that power over that period of time, what is created is value. And the companies that are valued using that lens always prove up, right? So there's 7 powers, and there's things like counter positioning, like Netflix was to Blockbuster, for example. Mm-hmm. There's process power, which businesses like IKEA have process power. They recycle everyone else's waste, their own waste, and make that into products. And then they've just got processes, flywheels on flywheels. And you can go through the rest of them. It's not a 7 powers lesson, but all of it points to this standing the test of time. And I think that that has rolled through my mind 100% when I've seen people pop up and get good at one element of what it's required to get attention. And I use the word attention specifically. It's not adding value and engagement, it's attention. And then the algorithm supports the attention. And then they've got a short window of time to say, what am I going to do with this attention? So if we've actually got a will that's often sponsored by purpose, right? So if purpose is our why, then it develops a strong will, and the skill can follow. that if we don't have the strong why in the first place and they just want to get rich or get famous or get attention, then I think it's an unhealthy thing that's being born. But I still want to come back to that discernment thing, because like the things that you've said there are very valid. And I believe that that's kind of like an integrity thing to hold that. I want to make sure that I'm doing what I say I can. I want to make sure I've walked the walk. I want to make sure I've got embodied wisdom. And not everyone has been doing it for a decade or more. So how does the external person, though, really tell the difference? Because everyone says they've got wisdom. Everyone says they've been walking the walk. Everyone's got enough of a story that it adds up. Like, how much time have people got to research what's real and what's not?
I mean, if the relationships are a great example of this, right? How many people do you know that fall into the same pattern, dating the same person, and they find out they were doing, X, Y, Z in the background and they weren't who they thought they were? It is such a common trait in humanity that we fall for the shiny object. I love a lot of Alex Hormozi's stuff, and he talks about like the woman in the red dress. It's like, oh, that's the new shiny thing, and I'm distracted by that, and I'm not going to stay the course on this because that technique looks better and shinier and, red dressier. And so I think it comes back down to knowing yourself. If you feel it, like your body literally communicates to you. And this is, I guess, to bring in more of that yogic and spiritual wisdom to it, of like, you are being guided in every sense. You are a soul who came to this earth on a journey, right? To uncover some stories, to let go of past stuff, whatever it is that you believe. But ultimately, there's a purpose to all the lessons that are coming along the way. So some coaches or some programs that you are like, I'm so sold on this. This marketing is amazing. This is going to change my life. And then you go into it and you're like, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And meh. Okay, so look at that. Have self-responsibility to actually discern what you are giving your attention to, who you are giving your attention to, who you are listening to, and why. Ask yourself, like, why is what this person is saying resonating with me? Is it triggering me that's making me feel uncomfortable, but I'm growing? Or are they saying something that is like speaking hard truths and I know I need to take action on this, but I'm in avoidance? It's really self-mastery first. When you know yourself, you're way less likely to fall for, the shiny object, because you can see through the shiny object. And it's frustrating because sometimes you're like, how come no one else can see that this is like just good marketing? Oh my gosh. Majority of people, are still eating the 5-star rating food thinking that the canola oil is better for them than olive oil, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because that's just, so that's always going to be that way. But the more that you actually are able to get in touch with yourself, the more that you have practices that connect you to your innate knowing, your innate wisdom, the innate intelligence inside of you that is guiding you towards whatever it is that you need to be guided towards in order to fulfill whatever it is you need to fulfill. That's when you know. That's when you know. People often say, it's a full body yes or a full body no. Sometimes it's nuanced. Sometimes there's nuances in there because you're like, well, hang on, I'm being charmed, I'm being called towards this person, but am I still going to be thinking about this in 3 months' time? Is this actually the path for me, or does it just seem like the shiny object to avoid whatever issue it is that I'm facing right now? So sometimes discernment is actually getting quiet. It's actually like not just continuing to scroll or not just continuing to read the sales page of what should I do, and coming back to, okay, what do I need in this moment? Like, how is my body communicating to me? Do I feel sick to my stomach because I'm fearful, or is it because I'm about to level up? Knowing how to determine the difference between fear and actual like intuitive guidance, because sometimes it's really scary to go to that next level or to like, pay that coach 10 grand for their program, but it actually might change your life, right? And it actually might not. But you have self-responsibility firstly within that, and never giving your power away to anything, to any silver bullet, no matter how good the coach is or how amazing what they've created is or whatever. It's always going to come down to you, your ability to firstly like implement and do the do, but it stops and starts with you. So if that's, particularly as an entrepreneur, and if you're a solo entrepreneur as well, you are the bottleneck, until that business kind of scales on a physical level, but also on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on an energy level. People feel and read energy, whether they're aware of it or not. If they have self-awareness, you'll straight away get in a room with someone and be like, I don't know what it was about that person, but they were so magnetic and I'm just so drawn to them and I want to be around them more. That person has worked on what I refer to as like the event horizon. So like the aura around them attracts people in, the right people, because they are walking their walk. They are staying true to their alignment, their values. That is what they're putting out there into the world. That is magnetism. That is them sharing their authentic values. yes, you could fake that to a point. And this is where people fall for the shiny object. And then it turns out, in a few years' time, that person doesn't exist anymore. And that whole thing they got caught up in has fallen down. And it's so easy to do because as humans, we're hardwired for connection, belonging, and growth. It's what we desire at our deepest core levels. So when someone's selling that, it's really easy to be like, that's speaking to my desire. But you almost have to stop and come back to yourself and take yourself through a bit of a checklist of okay, where is this sitting in my body? What's my role in this? What are my stories that I'm bringing to the table? What place am I making this decision from? Is it coming from a lack or a fear that I think doing that program is suddenly going to make me better? It's going to give you the skills and some extra tools that you don't have, but it's not a magic pill that just suddenly your business scales to $100 million a month because you did that course. It's taking the self-responsibility of really looking inwards and being where am I at and where is this coming from within me? Knowing the stories and the loops and the patterns that play out in your own life and in your own, maybe it's a family lineage, I don't know, but being aware of that. So awareness is the first step. When you're aware of it, you know where it's coming from and you know if you're making a decision from a place of this is actually going to help me get from point A to point B and I'm joining the program or whatever it is that you're taking the trip, doing the thing, or no, actually, this is just me repeating another pattern that I'm just desperate for someone to save me. Because nobody is coming to save you, period. It doesn't work that way. It's all self-generated. And when you have that connection to yourself, it's infinitely possible what you can do when you pull in the right people.
Yeah, I think that's a great read on it. And what's just occurred to me while we've been having this chat, and by the way, for our listeners and viewers, I don't know if you can tell because we're on pretty good software here, but you're in Greece at the moment. And so, but while I'm sitting here looking at you in the TV instead of right in front of you, it just occurred to me that long form content is one way to get more of an insight into whether someone's got embodied knowledge. Because short form content 100%. Anyone can make, right? You can learn to deliver short form content, especially with the editing and the AI editing and the AI script writing that's available, and the rise of everything that makes everything look good all the time, or at least the same as other things that used to be deemed as good. So long form though, that's when you're speaking, because it's pretty hard to doctor up 45 minutes of one-liners. So I think that's a good way to get more of an insight. And, from someone that's, I've been involved in companies, I've been involved in media on the good side and the bad side of that, but I haven't really carried a personal brand around with myself until I managed to transcend being a day-to-day person inside the companies I was in to only now I've only just installed a full management team and I'm in what they call the management phase of scaling up now. So I'm the founder that gets to go and pursue the things that are so important to me that I can't not do them. Otherwise I would have just exited. So I want to inject my soul back into the business. But part of that too is again, becoming self-aware of where I need to develop and making sure that as I'm sharing the story, it is coming from an authentic place, that there is value being created in the process, because one of my values is creativity or creation. So I could see now that even just hearing it from you, one possible sort of ruler to put through something or to measure something up against is if you are considering diving into a business relationship with anyone, not just in a life coaching or a business coaching or some other kind of expert role, that a good thing to do is go and consume some long form content of them. What do you think of that?
I get so many people who are new followers that come to my page. They'll look at some, so let's just use Instagram as an example. They'll look at some posts. They'll straight away go to my podcast and then they DM me, hey, I just listened to your podcast. Can you tell me more about your coaching or whatever it is you're offering? There's this kind of myth of we need to warm people up. And yes, it's true. I do that through, the systems and the funnels. And that is an important part of business, of the different touch points it takes for someone to build trust and da-da-da. But the long form builds trust so much faster because they hear my story on other people's podcasts, on my podcast, even all the media articles and stuff like that you can read about me. You still don't get a full read, right? Because the editor has edited that. They shaped it through the lens of what's relevant to their, particular audience. And so when people literally hear my voice or they hear me swear or they hear a kid in the background or I'm telling a personal story and you can genuinely feel that I'm not sitting there reading a script, it is really powerful. And I have literally had people join some of our high level programs from one podcast. They're like, I listened to that one podcast you did. I don't know what it is that you really even offer. I haven't even looked, but like, I just know that you're the person that can help me. And because they feel something in that story. And this is where storytelling is such an important part of building a personal brand. And often we think, and you know, for someone at your stage, right, it's like you've done the interesting stuff to tell the story. And this is where a lot of, you know, newer people starting out, and there's kind of this growth at the moment of people that have been established business people and are now like, oh, I see the value in a personal brand and now I want to create one. I have a client at the moment. They own 30 different chiro clinics all around Australia and New Zealand. Massive business empire, right? But a brand behind that, but no personal brand. And so I've been working with her on this journey of growing her personal brand in a new area. She really wants to focus on, you know, working with mums and children, which is a new career space for her. She's done more training in that area as a professional. And she's like, this is like, firstly, self-development on crack, because I've had to really look at myself and my story. But she's like, I've realized that the difference between me and these people that I've been scrolling and following for years isn't actually that much. I'm just as qualified. I'm just as worthy to be in that room. I know just as much as these other people, but now I'm backing that with actually strategic storytelling and strategic partnerships, because that's another part of this is like long form content, but also, you know, I talk about what's in your shopping trolley. And an example of this, so I'm in Greece right now. I was at a shopping center trying to read everything in Greek, because you might have told, I'm a little bit particular. I'm very much on the organic train. I like things to be as local as possible, you know, without all the seed oils, all the things. I'm that person. I'm that like crunchy mum, whatever bucket you want to put me in. And this woman comes up to me at the supermarket and she says, excuse me, do you speak English? And I'm like, well, it's pretty, you'll know in about 3 sentences that it's pretty clear I don't speak Greek. And she's like, can I just ask you if you know about these eggs that you've bought? Because I want something that's not from, you know, I want it to not be caged and I want it to not have all the hormones. Like, do you know about this company? And I'm like, that is so interesting, because she's making an assumption based on the amount of organic things and seeing me read every labels in this shopping trolley that I have associated myself with these products. She's associating me with someone that obviously cares about their health and might be able to help her find a solution to her problem of which eggs to choose. And it is the same in personal branding, who you align yourself with, what companies you partner with, who you promote, who you even talk about, you know, I'm using this sauce on my meal today as I get ready for the day. Like, these subtle little placements also communicate to your audience your values. Okay, that person clearly values health if they're willing to go the extra mile to find the organic butter, whatever it is. What's in your shopping trolley as a personal brand? Who are you aligning yourself with? And it's a really great strategy early on as you're doing more content that say, you know, okay, I'm going to do some stories of like day in the life kind of stuff, or more of a vlog style, and let people get to know me behind it. Those subtle things, I mean, obviously you could be contrived and try and shape the story, but people see themselves in that. Oh, you use that coffee? I use that coffee. Oh, that tells me something about you as a personal brand. Oh, you're really into this kind of niche brand of, or you only drink bulletproofs. That tells me something about you. So also thinking about what's in your shopping trolley. What are you subtly communicating to your audience, which is communicating what you value. And instead of thinking of like content pillars, get really clear on what are your values as a personal brand, because you have your personal values and they'll be similar to the personal brand values, but it also has to have relevance to what you ultimately offer and what your goals are. So you pick the ones that feel in alignment, and then you use them as your content pillars, as opposed to just business, education, you know, the generic ones. Those are topics that go through the lens of you've got creativity. So it's like, okay, this is me being creative in business. This is me being creative in how I approach my fitness and my workouts. This is, you know, you take that value and you communicate it in a bunch of different ways. And this is messaging 101. When you listen to, let's say, a politician give a speech and they say that same freaking thing over and over and over and over again, you're like, if you watch the long form of that, you're like, oh my gosh, this person is a broken record. But they know they're only going to get a snippet of someone's attention or a news grab for that key message to be put through.
Yes, yeah.
So this is what the true meaning of consistency is. It's knowing your values and just communicating them over and over and over and over again through the long form content, through the short form content, to really communicate to people, this is what I stand for, in these subtle ways. So you're not saying the same thing over and over and over again, but that is what creates that resonance in a brand, because then someone actually sees themselves in you, or aspires to see themselves in you, or goes, I don't agree with your butter choice, but I loved how you did your toast, like whatever it is. It's conversation points, but it humanizes a personal brand 100%, but it also shows what you value. And I cannot tell you the amount of people that slide into my DMs and go, I think we have really similar values. Can you tell me more about working with you?
Yeah.
Because those values have been communicated. Firstly, they're embodied in who I am, but they are strategically communicated through all of these touch points. So people feel that they know me already when they step into my world after having listened to a couple of podcasts and consumed a few Instagram posts, because I'm really clear on communicating over and over again the story and the values.
Yeah, I think there's a real strong message in there. And this is your lived experience also, that embodied experience and knowledge of PR, and how it is such a unique combination to be blending that kind of like real world value of that most people in most companies or even in personal roles can take advantage of, especially now everyone has the opportunity to have a personal brand. Well, they've all got one. It's just that some of them don't shine much and some of them don't reflect who they are. But to then be able to take that into the industries that we're talking about here, the wellness, the yoga, and helping other people kind of bring that into real world life, it's really valuable. One thing that did really, keep coming into my mind then, it's like a broken record each time I hear it as well, because I'm constantly talking about this with myself. And I believe now, like I'm in my 40s now, I'm 43 now, and I look at the eras of my life where like I've always been a collaborator. I've always been big on community and involving others and sort of creating some sort of value. And that's where the creativity, one of my values, comes from. In business, I've seen it as collaborative, so in Presence Group, which is our group of real estate companies, we have CX Obsessed as our aspirational top value, because like the whole experience and the moments that go with it are really important. But then the next one is We're Better Together, which is really about collaboration. And then I've got another one about We're Makers, Not Takers, because we want to create value for all involved, even those that aren't paying us. There's still an on-flow effect from good decisions being made and us paying it forward and giving good guidance. And when we create value, then we all get a bigger piece of the pie without it being a zero-sum game. I look at my life and the sort of darker nights of the soul, as some would say, or the dips that I've had where things just aren't in sync, aren't in alignment. And I look at who I've kind of let into my life with that natural collaborator, maker, not taker vibe, but my discernment wasn't on point. And I had feelings. I could feel those feelings, right? But my nature was like, okay, these people are coming across like this, but I see the good in them. I am willing to kind of take them on the journey, and I'll do some heavy lifting, and they should come along with it as well. Should. Pretty dangerous word there. End up shooting all over myself multiple times. And you've been pushing should uphill in a barrow. So we've both dealt with that. And I think values really, you can only really tell if they're true, if they exist, when they're tested. And they're tested when it's not convenient, like when there's a proper challenge. And if we ever get into a business where we actually are willing to hire and fire on values, like everyone says at conferences, and then hardly any people do it, you've only got to just see the staff they've got and how they're talking, and it's totally different than the founder or the leaders that are upholding those values. When challenging times come and there's an opportunity for values to be tested, it's bloody ugly, what I have seen. And it's like pretty much the opposite of the stated words that go with values. I'm assuming you've come across some of these experiences as well. One of those experiences might have been when you were in the police force. Like there's and you're working PR to keep, Channel 7 and other people off the crime scenes. You would have got to see that in organizational culture, but also in the crimes that were occurring. I'm really keen on a bit of a, gritty story that you could share with us on something you saw there that you could pass on.
First thing I want to say is the story that you just shared then of that, like seeing value and wanting to help other people. This is maybe a whole other topic, but boundaries is the big thing there. We can live in flow and abundance of like, I want to collaborate with everybody and I want to help everyone and do all these things. But if the river doesn't have banks, it's a full on flood, and that is a total shit show. And as someone whose house literally got flooded in the Byron Bay floods many years ago, I have seen what flooding does, right? It's absolute disaster, right? So you need the banks of the river. And this is where these discernments, these like, oh, they've got values like me, I just want to keep helping them, but I'm ignoring the red flags. You also have to have those boundaries, personal boundaries within yourself. So that could be something to come back to. But the police stuff was so interesting, right? So basically there's kind of two sides to how that police media works. You've got the, I guess, shaping the narrative, the proactive side of things, which is the positive police stories, the cute puppies, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the other side of that, which is literally the reactive team. So that is literally going through, you have access to every job that has been reported, every crime. And it is wild what, particularly in the realms of like mental health and child abuse and stuff like that doesn't actually make the media. But essentially you're going through and looking, what is a journalist going to be flagging? Because they're listening to the calls, they're seeing the stuff that's going out. And then how are we essentially taking that and more or less shaping the narrative to protect people? So for example, sometimes you would use media to help you actually solve crimes. So we had a scenario where there was a missing persons case, right? Seems pretty simple. This couple were last seen in a town and they go missing. So we're like, we need to use the police the public to find them. So that's when you see these, like, if you've seen this person, call Crime Stoppers, da 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 da. Now, there was a few subtle messages in that case that alerted journalists of like, hang on a second, these guys are really trying to find these people. This is more than a missing case. These people must be known to police. These people were running a full underground, I have like full body goosebumps, a full underground child pornography ring. Horrendous, right? So strategically, but they don't want obviously to raise the alarm that that's why we're looking for these people, because that, triggers a deeper, there's obviously a network of people. It's a whole thing. So it's how do you leverage the media to get the exposure to find these people? Meanwhile, these people's parents, the woman, they had no idea. The family had no idea she was in. They were like, she's gotten together with this new boyfriend. She's kind of gone a bit weird, but we really want to find our daughter. So then the police we're leveraging them to make these heartfelt pleas of like, please help us find our daughter. The more investigative side of the police force is like, keep this on the DL because we want to nail this whole ring. But we also want to find these people. We also don't want the family to find out why, because that it's just so complex, all the different layers. But then when you really, really try and use media to find someone, of course the media are like, why? So then they go digging and they'll knock on the person's door. And the investigative journalist side of things, like there has been so many stories where the journalist is the person to knock on the door and inform a family that their loved one has died because they found out about it first. And like, can you give me a comment on the death of your son? And the mother's like, what are you talking about? Police haven't even had a chance to notify us yet. So it was this really interesting strategic balance of like, how do you firstly control the narrative? Because it is important that people trust the police in order to cooperate with them. There's a narrative playing out there. And then how do you leverage exposure and media? And these people ended up being found because someone was like, yeah, I saw them at a gas station in some random country town a few hours ago. And, thus that information is so valuable to finding someone in a country that is so big. And, as we know, Australia, you could disappear into the bush pretty quickly. So it's really valuable. It's a real interesting strategy. But then also, how do you keep that narrative out of the media so that the people involved in this bigger ring aren't alerted to what is potentially going on and start covering their tracks? It's fascinating. And it's a whole different side of media and PR that is happening all day, every day. And the landscape of that has shifted now with social media. And as I was working with the police was when they started getting a social media team. Like that started to become a thing because they realized, we probably should be on the front foot of all of this. And it's really, really tricky and complex in terms of, I guess it's relevant to business owners because they're also doing those same kinds of things. In some ways, maybe you're trying to attract investment because your company needs more money coming in, but not alerting your customers to that potential shift and trying to communicate to them in a different way. And so it's all this nuanced communication of how do you communicate with certain people to get the outcome that you want and you need, without, triggering some other kind of fire that potentially creates a shitstorm that you don't want. And ultimately trying to control some sort of message and narrative so that it doesn't just get messy. And then once you start then having journalists, for example, knocking on different policemen's door, if they're not media trained, they say the wrong thing. And it's like, yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed, it was stressful and everyone in that environment needs to meditate. But it was fascinating to see behind the scenes of how do you really, and they don't always get it right. Like I was working with them during the time of the Melbourne riots with them. Remember people were like camping in tents and protesting the 1%, and there was like police horses it it's really crazy. And you're in this thing of trying to manage public perception, trying to also protect the police officers, whilst also knowing full well what is happening behind the scenes and why the story has to go that way. And so sometimes it was better for us to let the police force take the fall publicly and be seen as the bad guys in order for the case to be solved. And that was a big thing for me, because I guess I kind of went in there with a little bit more of like a F the police and like F authority and like, you know, go the little people. And then when you really see the complexities behind the scenes, right, you go in with that like authority, and then you realize, okay, obviously not, I'm not saying like everyone is amazing and there's nuance to everything that's good and bad, but a lot of the time you would have to take a fall publicly in order for the behind the scenes outcome to be better. And sometimes it's the same in businesses. You see the CEO, the spokesperson, whatever it is, takes the fall in order for the actual underlying goals of that company to play out. And so it's like this complex strategy on top of strategy playing out. And it's nuance. I think people these days forget that. We think everything is so black and white. You're a good guy or a bad guy, but there's like shades of gray in everything, in the way you communicate, in the way you strategize, in the whole scheme of things.
No, I resonate with that on so many levels. And that's a fascinating sort of cracking open of something that appears black and white, or blue and white in Australia, as many would think with the police. But it's quite noble that they would be willing to kind of take a fall for the course of justice to go the way it needs to, or to unlock something bigger. I'll tell you what, we have been flowing flat out here, actually, and it's felt quite effortless as per flow. And just given the time constraints that we have to keep these as punchy as possible, this would be one of our longer ones, I reckon. There's something in that. I might, I'm going to give a hint to something you're doing at the moment without going into full detail, but I'd love viewers and listeners to follow a bit of your journey, because this is something that's kind of the aspirational sort of future paced reality that you're creating over there in Greece with your sort of wellness, retreats, resorts, everything like that. I think that's just so wonderful what you're doing, because like you have actually walked the walk when it comes to, okay, I'm going to jump out of this, but you've not just escaped and gone and done yoga and said, fuck the system like we've been talking about. You are now like very intentional about what you're creating, and that's really helpful. It's like a flywheel, because your customers, clients, anyone that you deal with, or even people just following around your messaging, because you can still give value without them being a client, they're actually seeing that you are embodying what you're talking about. And I think the way to wrap it up is really just to hear your definition of flow, considering you have a podcast with flow in it, the Flow Lane. You have a business that is very much about the Flow State Collective. And I just wanted to raise the book. That's my third piece there. It's sitting on the wall behind you. And, to be able to find your flow is something amazing, but it'd be great if people could hear your definition of that.
Yeah. So to be in a state of flow is your birthright. You were born, you came to this earth with a clear mission and purpose. And in the spiritual realms, they've got spiritual studies they've done of this, but basically you're born, you know your purpose and your mission. And then once you hit 6 months or so, you start to forget. You start to get allured by, oh, it's cute to be a baby and I'm getting all these like goo goo gaga things, and you forget what you came here to do essentially. And so this is why a lot of people wake up lost, out of alignment, miserable, sick, like their nature has literally knocked on their door, the universe, whatever you want to call it, God has knocked on their door and gone, you're not here doing what you came here to do. You're not being of service to the natural evolution of the universe. And there's a concept in yoga called like dharma. And people often think of that as, what is my life purpose? And they spend their whole life freaking out, or they tap out and go and meditate in a cave on it for the rest of their life. Dharma is your contribution to the ever evolving changes in the universe. So it evolves in each moment. It's how you respond to each moment. So to be in a state of flow is effortless response, right? You see a sports person, right? And they're in flow playing the game. They're not thinking about the play. They just effortlessly know, I have to go here. I need to be there. I catch the ball, because they've done the reps. So to be in a state of flow, you have mastered something. You've mastered it to a point that it becomes effortless. You're not just strumming a guitar going, oh, this sounds awful. The notes just flow effortlessly. So you've self-mastered something which enables you to flow with it, but it is of service. And when it's of service and in alignment, you are literally being guided. And when it's not, you start to wobble, or you might need to start to master something new, or you feel those little knocks of like, oh, this didn't work out and this didn't work out. And what's going on here? Okay, maybe I need to reassess before I'm literally hitting a brick wall. And so it's actually tapping into your innate wisdom, your birthright, that is, I am flow. I am flow state. I am here to flow through life. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that there won't be tasks and trials and tribulations and things that are kind of guiding you back on course. But the more in touch with yourself you become, the more self-awareness, the more self-mastery. When you think about a football player masters the game, they experience flow state when they're playing a game because they've mastered it. You master yourself. You experience flow state when you're washing dishes, when you're doing the most mundane things in life, because you're so in tune with where you're being guided and where you need to go next, that you're able to then see the knocks before they literally knock you over. And so that is to live in a state of flow, to live in accordance with your life's purpose, with what it is that you came to this earth to do, and to feel that you're in alignment with your values, to have the container of your boundaries guiding you along the way. That is what leads to fulfillment, happiness, all these kinds of things that, money can contribute to but can't buy. Or relationships, again, all of those things, it's all guiding you. So to be in a state of flow is to literally just be following that internal charm, that internal impulse that is guiding you exactly where you need to go, and being able to trust that when things feel wobbly. That is
a wonderful definition, and I've already anticipated that it would have been a good one from you. This is someone that's been living it for a long time. And, just the key point that I'm just going to pull out of that and resonate with you on is that it's not always going to be easy to be in flow, or at least to be experiencing flow on a regular basis, because it's like a gradient. And we do get signals when we're coming back onto it. I've often said it's linked to Dharma, linked to destiny path, linked to purpose, linked to potential. But there's a sense when you are there. And, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which no doubt that you've studied his work as well, he talks about we need a clear goal and we need to be getting instant feedback, always, as to whether we're on track for that goal or not. And the good thing is what happens when you're on track for a goal that's important to you, because there's a why behind you driving you. So that creates a will to then develop the skills, but the skills need to be stretched to the challenge, because you are setting the challenge of something you want to progress towards, because it's saying, I must move forward in order to contribute and add value. So I really like that thing there that you've just sort of indicated. Yes, you're kind of here to serve and to receive from that service, because if we're all connected to it in that sort of universal kind of sense, that it's not always going to be easy. And, I intended to just talk about obsession today, and I think you've already wrapped it up enough in the way that you've said it, but the sports people are a prime example of that. You're not thinking of what the crowd's saying about you when you're in flow and you're focused on that next kick or that next shot or that next arrow that's going to hit the bullseye in an archery range or whatever. Yeah, and time dilates. It goes away. So the self-consciousness goes away, the time goes away. And whilst we say it's effortless, we could be using so many calories in our body, so much sort of what others see as grind, and then they shame upon you sometimes, or sort of give you a bit of gaslighting or something. Oh, you're working too hard. Oh, you're obsessive. And that's more about them. But that obsession can be healthy if it's in the direction of where that purpose is coming from and the will that we've got. You are definitely on that track. I've felt the flow during this, and I know our viewers and listeners are going to probably play this more than once, I think, Emma. So I hope they grab a copy of your book, Find Your Flow, because I've found even more of mine when I've just been listening, and I can't wait to see this one come out in full length. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to chat and just flow with you. Yes. Get out there and enjoy Crete. What a beautiful part of the world. I'll let you go and start plotting the next stage of your amazing transcendence to having one of the best things over there. People will find out about that on your socials, no doubt. Thanks very much, Emma. I'll catch you around the traps. Thank you. Thanks so much.